That's a good explanation. I just said your jaw, jaw and the letter D.
Jahdi.
Perfect.
Okay.
And we're done.
And we're starting the podcast. That's where we're going. We're in
How
this.
do you explain your name?
Conversation here started, but we are gonna get started with this podcast, guys. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Always Making. We are joined in studio again with an amazing guest. Rochelle Jahdi Co is your social, your Instagram, your store, but you are a miniature artist. We're gonna get into all the fun stuff you're doing, because when I go down the rabbit hole, you do a lot more than just miniature.
I know. Yeah, it's a long story.
You got your hands in a lot of things.
But that story is what we want to hear from you. So we'll get into that in just a few minutes here. But before we do, I just want to say thank you guys for everybody who has joined us on the last couple holiday shows that have come through, said hi, checked out some of our stuff, supported what we're doing. We are done with the holiday season. After last night was our last show. So we are going to be finishing off the year with just relaxing.
Yeah, nice.
And packing and then traveling.
Yeah, but the podcasts are still going to be coming. We have this episode here that you guys are listening to right now, and then we will have one just during that like winter break time coming out, and then we'll be back into the new year with some awesome great guests that we already have scheduled out. So stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe. If you guys know more local artists in the Salt Lake local area, please have them reach out, or reach out for them. Send us information. We like seeing, learning, meeting like all the local fun talented people out here in Salt Lake. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Don't be shy.
Share.
If you've got something coming up and you want to like promote it, reach out.
All right, so Rochelle,
Hi.
This is we've been working on this one for a while to get you in here.
I know, they've been very diligent, and I don't know why, but they have been kind enough to care.
Because your stuff
why,
is awesome.
very awesome stuff. If you guys are watching this video and not just listening, Rochelle did bring us a little miniature for our shelves here, so we've got a little new piece to put up. But you do miniature. Well, let's start first. We met you at Mill Creek Common at the Craft Lake City DIY Market, or
Maker's Mart.
That's what it was called. Yeah.
Yep. We were booth neighbors.
We were booth neighbors there. Your setup is amazing. You have these really great, like, they're like storefront looking displays, but they're like from gothic,
very
like
Harry
English,
Potter,
Harry
Diagon Alley.
So it's got this really cool look to it, and so we were very like drawn in right away. We've seen your stuff also at Craft Lake City. You've had your booth there as well, and we've kind of seen how, but we never had the conversation until we were like, hey, booth neighbors, hey, how you doing? But how did this all get started for you?
Short version would be better.
We got an hour, so
I can. I'm going too long. Started out as an art major, when I graduated high school, and I'm old, you guys. This is like early 90s. So anyway, back then there wasn't social media, there wasn't anything. So trying to earn a living as an artist was super hard. So I quickly realized that probably wasn't a viable major at the time, and so I switched to interior design and did that for a very long time, hence the set for my booth and stuff kind of came out of that genre. But all my life I've liked to do a million art forms. There's a lot of things I've tried, and there's very few I haven't tried.
I've gone down the rabbit hole of Instagram, and I have seen it's I'm gonna throw some dates out there, and to correct me if I'm wrong, but 2019 is at least when the social media started, right?
Yeah,
for you,
that channel,
for Instagram. Yeah. And so I saw woodworking was the first thing we saw posted there, and then soap making, and then vintage, vintage.
You really went back.
I did. I like to make sure.
Some people are like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, you did some vintage. What were you selling? Vintage?
Yes, stuff? Which I still love.
Like vintage home decor kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then we went into the jewelry. Then we got some like
stationery, little paper goods.
Stationery paper goods.
Yeah. Wow. And then better than myself. I'm like, what have I?
And then we saw some of your first miniatures were out of clay. Is that, or
I'm trying to remember. No, I think the smaller pieces, but the first thing I did was actually really large, which is sort of a mistake by New Miniatures, by the way. It was huge. So it was this huge apothecary. It opens up. It's big. It's like maybe 3 feet. by 3 feet is huge. And that was my first thing, which was a massive undertaking. It was a huge learning curve, but I still have it and I love it. But it was all paper, cardboard. I mean, little everything, books. I made everything. But that was like the big kahuna. As far as little things, clay probably was closer to the beginning of like just objects.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, and
Not
then
spaces, but
we went from like the jewelry then into like the miniature architectural kind of pieces.
yes, that's a good way to put it.
And then you've gone through like what it looks like on your website. You explain it as like modern dollhouse accessories and other miniatures.
That's a new thing now.
And
right
then
now,
that's more of like the modern. And then you have like your characters also
Little
that
figures.
you've created. Like so you've got your ghost figures, you've got pumpkin figures. What other type of figures do you have that you're like creating?
the ghosts and the like the pumpkins, and they're the most that I do as far as little people.
Okay,
little
so
creatures.
Those are all the characters.
Yes.
Okay, so when you walk into your like booth storefront looking thing, there's such a large collection of stuff. Like you said, high school you did art, but like where did that inspiration to like come from?
That.
Like all go that direction.
Well, so now my new like tagline is like all things magical and mini. So because it's not just miniatures, but the whole point of getting into miniatures for the most part was because I like to do so many art forms. And after I quit doing interior design in 2008, I actually went into marketing, which is a whole other story. But so I understand the problem with branding yourself is a million things. But I was just kind of finding myself. And what I realized was I hate sticking to one thing, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
Same.
So a lot of creatives, we feel like that, right? So I just realized when I do miniatures, I'm actually able to do multiple art forms, but in miniature. So like last Craft Lake City for holiday, I wasn't here this year, but last year I had miniature oil paintings based on paintings my father did, actually.
Oh wow!
Cool.
Which I surprised him with one because he didn't know I was doing that. But you know, they're like 4 inches big, and his is
So
huge.
there's art in the family then.
There's art only through my father.
Oh, okay.
Everybody else is an engineer or doctor.
Wow.
I'm Middle Eastern. This is what is expected. I am the bad child because I couldn't do any of that. That was not happening. Math and physics. I'm like, just shoot me now.
I will say your architectural pieces are very
Yeah.
mathematical
Oh,
and
gonna
Well, that's my
say.
design background. That's because I studied architecture, but it's all looks, you know. Nothing's going to function really well. So,
But it looks great.
but that's the design element because I love being an interior designer. Actually, once I stopped doing that, I ended up doing film set design, and I like being on the other side of the camera.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of our background as well. We have the film background, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
And I did production design for a hot minute.
yeah,
See, so
and
you know what I'm saying.
built
It's
a bunch of
creative,
sets,
right?
and
But it's
like
also
yeah.
highly
Yeah.
stressful. Long hours.
Yeah.
Yes,
Real
yes,
long hours.
exactly. And
Yes.
often like short turnarounds and
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So that's kind of where it all went. But so I started doing miniatures because, it was smaller, but also I could create these environments because that's why I like to do in design. I was creating environments. Same thing with like film sets. But then also I could do multiple types of art. But this tying together thread was they were miniatures.
So with the different pieces you've created, you've kind of have this modern or like real life stuff where you've got like New York subways, some trash cans, some like urban pieces.
Yeah.
You've got Harry Potter inspired like full structure scenes, Halloween structures and things like that. But where did that whole inspiration for those pieces kind of come from? Because you've kind of playing both worlds, like mythical, like magical, and then even like modern, like urban stuff. But
right. I think 90% is more the magical kind of science fiction. You know, I'm an 80s teen, so grew up with Star Wars and the old Star Trek, and then my children grew up with Harry Potter. And actually my two sons look like Harry Potter. So they had bright blue eyes, same color hair, a lot of Halloween costumes of Harry Potter. I think we had 6. So I got real good at it, but I just didn't get into it at all. I was just like, oh, you know, it's a cute story. I read the first book. I'm like, I don't know. It didn't do anything for me.
yeah.
And then I don't know what happened, but 2 years ago, I finally watched the movies, I guess is what happened to me. And I was working in my art room, literally just watching it on my iPad. And I'm like, this is crazy good. This is, where have I been? Kind of, you know, like, oh my word. No wonder my kids like love this.
Well, and the visuals in the movies are amazing. So
they are amazing. Stuart Craig is the production designer. He's my hero. Like if I could work with him, So when I go to Orlando and Universal, I'm not even on the rides, my boyfriend just walks, he goes to the rides and I'm like, see you later. I'll be in Diagon Alley for like the next 5 hours just looking at everything. Like, I don't care about the rides. I just want to envelop in this world. It's amazing to me.
Always interesting that, like, because I have the same kind of like feeling, not towards Harry Potter, but like the Star Wars build out in Disneyland now.
Yes.
And so like
I want
you
to see that.
all those
So
little
good.
details, all the little stuff.
Yes.
You're not really there looking for the ride, but you're looking at like how they did the art
The
pieces, how
environment.
they built the environment.
Yes.
That's always a fun part. I love going into other like even during the like mall time, like winter mall time, where they build out like Santa's workshop and stuff like that. Like, it's always cool to see. I'm like, okay, I think we could build something like this. I think, okay, I see their structure, or like, oh, that's a really good technique. And I'm like, kind of, like, you're looking and picking apart differently than what I think the normal person.
The normal person's like, this is cool. Yeah, no, it's true.
With your little history in video production and set design, like, besides the Harry Potter movies, is there other movies and other things that you're inspired by to like create?
Yeah, definitely. Dune really took me on. I did a lot of art based on Dune. I haven't put it out.
Okay. So coming soon.
It's coming soon to a theater near you. No, just kidding. It's to an art show near you. Yeah, it's funny because my youngest looks so similar to Timothée Chalamet. Like, they're the same height, the weight, hair, everything about them, other than he's very quiet. Or Timothée Chalamet is really not quiet. So it was almost like, as a mother, I'm like, that's so weird, like watching somebody that looks like my son. I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah.
He looks different than the Viking kid. I have a son that looks like a Viking. Anyway, so that movie though, just, I don't know. The first one specifically, I really like that the visuals in the desert and everything was just so cool. The costuming, the music, all about that. So, and you brought up Star Wars. I grew up, I remember distinctly going to the theater and watching Empire Strikes Back. And the environment of this was a new thing. Okay. And the whole theater just erupted. Like, it was a big, big deal. So Star Wars.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah, Star Wars. You don't see a lot of Star Wars in my work, but it's actually coming. Star Wars and The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings are coming too. So
man,
it's like that genre. I love Star Trek, like literally the old TV show, the cheesy or the better. But I love all Star Trek too. So as a little kid, I was either watching Star Wars, Star Trek, all of that kind of stuff. It was totally up there for me. Harry Potter's just like my current obsession.
You are definitely playing at all of our fandoms and everything.
Yeah.
Star Trek, not so much. I think we're more Doctor Who than we are Star
Doctor
Trek
Who's
when it comes
cool
to like
too.
cheesy sci-fi kind of stuff. But it's definitely, I'll be itching to see what you do with Star Wars stuff.
That's the old ones. Like, just not into the new now.
Because it's
no offense to anybody, but I'm old school, like 1980s, 90s Star Wars.
Well, there was a small stint of time where I was doing miniature like set toys, set building for toys, and so I had a buddy who had a bunch of Star Wars toys, and so we would take his toys and I'd build out all kinds of different sets, and we'd like do photography and stuff. And then I had another friend who was like we wanted to potentially do a stop motion zombie thing with some of our toys. And I mean, this was like, when I say toys, this is me at like maybe 25, 26 years old.
Oh yeah, no, hey, it never dies. Stay a child forever.
They're action figures, not toys.
But
collectible.
It's always that I always enjoyed playing with and building the sets, because that's like the smaller scale I can get behind. It's easier to manage. I've built big sets. I've built big things that like humans are on and taking that, like, doing their stuff.
Yeah.
But like when I do the smaller things, I'm like, oh, I can do so much more with this because I have so much more like kind of flexibility at a smaller scale. So I understand where you're coming from, like finding that like kind of like freedom and like, oh, I can do so much with that little bit. That's there.
Kind of opened it up.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that being said, we're talking miniatures, but they still take a lot of time.
Oh, they take a tremendous amount of time.
So I was going to say, how long does your average, miniature like architectural piece take versus like maybe one of your figures or characters?
So the characters are way better and easier, obviously. the prices show that. But I'll do, like recently, obviously going back to Harry Potter, I did the Shrieking Shack, for those of you who know Harry Potter. The Shrieking Shack and the Burrow. But that was, they're maybe like 10 inches high. So, but they're in the hundreds because that's, weeks of my life.
Yeah.
Because I try to put a ton of detail. And even though they're small, that kind of carries with it more time sometimes because it's so tiny. You have to like
tiny little
tweezers. Yeah. But it's magical to me, no pun intended, but magical to me when somebody sees that and they're just like, they don't even know I'm looking at them yet. In the booths where you're manning the booth, you know?
Yeah.
And they are just smiling from ear to ear, and they are just, that little kid in them comes out, and that's my favorite part of my work. If they attach themselves to those architectural pieces, because you are kind of taking a piece, but it's real, that you can hold it in your hands and bring that part back to your life, you know, your home. And that's why I like the architectural pieces, but they do take weeks.
So it's got to be hours and hours.
Hours and hours. So they're, you know, they sell me every once in a while because you have to really love it.
So
which makes sense. It's expensive a little bit, but not as near as expensive as people I know that they're in the thousands, you know.
You hit on a specific thing that I really do enjoy when you're at a booth and you're kind of sitting there and people walk by and they get that big smile because they see something in your booth. Like there's pieces where I'm like, they just walk by and you get the giggles out of like the art piece. I'm like, cool. I hit some nerve or something that like they really were like happy about or stoked. But I want to talk about when you got started actually going out and putting yourself into a marketplace situation. So when was the first show that you actually did?
Well, the first show I did was a long time ago.
Okay.
We're talking 20 years. So you guys were like 5. But no, back in the day, really didn't know what I was doing though. And then I ended up selling wholesale stuff to local stores. So that was a long time ago. Then I stopped completely and I just had my regular career and life and everything. But this iteration of what you're seeing now, where I kind of know a little bit more what I'm doing, was 2 years ago at Craft Lake City at DIY Fest. Was my very first time.
That was your first start
in 20 years. So it was pretty much like my first time is what it felt like. Wasn't terribly prepared, but I did what I could and got a really, really sweet response. Had very nice booth neighbors who had done it a lot, and they were much more seasoned and gave me some good advice on what's going on now. And so, 2 years ago, so 2022.
And I take it that first experience was pretty positive because you're still doing it?
It was positive. It wasn't a huge amount of sales, but it was the first time I had kind of been doing miniatures. And that was the first time I had people buying my miniatures. Yeah. And there was experiences within that were really fun and exciting to see. And that was the first time where I'd kind of put those out there for the world to see and hear feedback. And one husband, his wife wanted to buy something and he bought that for her. And they said, can you hold it for us? Because they wanted to walk around. Then she walked away and he came back alone and he's like, and I want to buy that, but don't tell her till we come back. So they came back and it was like, it was $100 piece. Yeah. Cute. So I handed her 2 bags when she came back. She's like, I just had the one. I'm like, no. Surprise. And then this last year was astronomically bigger for me, actually.
Have you had, besides that experience you just shared, any other booth experiences from like guests, or not guests, but I guess shoppers or patrons that like really stick with you?
Yeah, this last one, ironically, back again at Craft Lake City. I love those guys. They've actually been a huge catalyst for me to believe in myself.
Yeah, they're one of our favorite shows to do. Absolutely. We look forward to it every year.
Yeah, that's my favorite show. It's my most successful show. I like the people. I like working with them. I love the fellow artists that are there. It's just a cool environment. Really cool. But yeah, it was the Shrieking Shack. Actually, my original, I made 2 now, but my original, I've never done it before. And it was kind of my baby. I literally was packing and I'm like, do I really want to sell it? Because it's really not the amount I can charge versus the amount of hours. I'm kind of losing money in a way, but anyway, I put it out there, and this tall guy, big guy, just like a football linebacker. Anyway, he came in with his mom. They were talking to me. He kept eyeing that. And then they left and came back, and they left and came back. Anyway, he came back the 3rd time. He's like, I got to take it.
Can't stop thinking about it.
He was just like, loved that thing. And then he came back the last day of the show, and he's like, I let my nieces and nephews see it, but they can't touch it. And it's up, and he's just like, cherish this thing I made. I'm like, all right, the right person got this piece. Yeah. And that just stuck with me. But just the things that people say, or I've even had people get teary, which is insane. It makes me teary. Yeah. Just because something means so much to them, and I hit something. Yeah. Part of a story or part of a IP that means a lot to them. Yeah. 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 And that's more than the money. I mean, the money's, just part of trying to continue on and survive. So
necessary evil.
Yeah. No, I'm not rolling in any of you guys. But
that is one of those things where like yes, we want this to survive. We want to continue doing what we're doing. And like the money is necessary to fund what we are doing, but it is not the driver.
It's not the driver.
And like that's a thing I think that comes through and like what lasts for people if they're willing to put in the time and effort, like the drive to create, to make, to get your hands dirty, and it like keeps you going. And those experiences you have with people who appreciate it, because it's tough. It is the starving artist, like,
it's real.
is real, and like there is success and there's a lot of hard work. But I mean, you talked about it already, like you've put weeks into some of your pieces, and then to let it go, like you could probably ask maybe 4 or 5 times more.
Oh yeah, I've been told that. I've been told that a lot. Yeah,
for some of your pieces, but it's also like you have to be almost in a realist mindset of like, is someone gonna like how long
can they do it?
Yeah, how long am I gonna sit on this before someone actually comes to this point? Is this the right avenue like for people to like actually spend and bring in like at this show? But it is always like awesome to hear when you have somebody take the piece and like really like find the right home for it, kind of thing, and you're like, okay, and
appreciate it.
It's like I think it's the right move at this point, kind of
exactly. Well, that's why I love your little figures aren't just like, oh, buy this. It's like adopt a ghost or like adopt this figure. Like you're bringing home a little character, a little
and that's
cute
little
packaging,
figure. So you can see, you can hear the story about them, and they're all, they got their little personalities, and you can name them.
Yeah, but it's like you're bringing home not just like, oh, this is something cute I'm gonna put on a shelf, but it's like it's something that you created and made with the intention of like, this is a whole little like character that exists in the world now.
Yes, and the names people give to are hilarious. I'll hear some funny names.
Guys, Christy stepped out real quick to take care of Juniper. She's waking up from a nap, so she might join us and jump back in on this conversation here. If not, we're going to continue this conversation here. But your pieces that you do, I do want to talk about your tools and your work area. And because like miniature wise, you would think you can work in a small space and not get overwhelmed with things, but we're having conversation off camera a little bit. What is your main tool? I'd make a guess, X-Acto knife. Like that's like maybe
X-Acto knives. I could own stock. Yeah, those things are definitely
what
amazing.
Tool is it that you can't work without?
That
okay.
It's all hand tools. If I had more space, I would use like my miter saw to cut down wood, but instead I'm using like a Japanese handsaw and a little miter box. But that's the other thing about miniatures is you don't need big tools. You need space for supplies. That's the problem. Or things in progress. There's a lot of little buildings and things drying everywhere in my office. Like literally everywhere. Like on top of my printer and my dresser and there's like things midway. So
there
it's more
was shelves, but those shelves are loaded with stuff, and now they cannot dry things.
It's a joke. I literally keep trying to make content of me organizing my office. I'm like, why? Because tomorrow it's going to be any mess. So I have a lot of, here's the before. I'm like, where's the after? I don't even know. Anyway, so those tools. I just got a 3D printer. Started to figure that out. My buddy gave that to me, so that's in there too. But honestly, the tools, it's all hand stuff. So like my T-square and my scale ruler and my, it's foam core. I use a lot of that, and it's more the paper goods and stuff like that.
Do you use like a hot knife like for your foam, or is it all like hand?
I don't do a lot of foam.
Okay.
You're talking about like the insulation pink foam?
Yeah.
I do have a hot knife. I just haven't gotten into that one as much. I do more foam core board.
Okay.
Like thick 1/2-inch foam core board.
Okay.
Which cuts fine with a box cutter and an X-Acto knife, and my cutting mat pad has had its day too.
Yeah, with some of the D&D stuff that we've played and built, and like we've made a bunch of miniatures and a bunch of sets that way as well. And so
very cool.
The hot knives.
That's another thing I want to get into. Because
the D&D stuff is
it's fun.
Like I think I enjoyed building more than I liked playing. Like I like playing, but like again, it's the world building side of things.
World building.
And like you're building the sets and building all the different pieces. And so when you said 3D printer, the thing that came into us for the 3D printer is like when the reason I convinced Christy to let me get our 3D printer is because I could save money on our D&D pieces.
It's true. It's true.
And we printed so many D&D tiles and buildings and all kinds of stuff. But one of the fun things with miniature buildings and actually using foam is there's a lot of people who make windows and doors that are you just cut out the slot in the foam, pop that window in, and then you kind of do some little like clay work around it or some kind of like accent to like kind of hide the seams.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
That's where I'm trying to get to that.
It's super fun.
I'm still just learning it.
I'll have to show you some.
Mine
of the
are all
stuff.
handmade with like wood and wood glue, and it's a crap. It's
so
really difficult. If you look at windows, it's really hard, you guys. Especially I do a lot of the like Yorkshire or York.
All the intricate detail
yes,
in the windows.
And they're rounded. That's a whole other thing.
Is there? So I know one of the like the fun tips with like texture on foam board and stuff is like taking a ball of foil and like rolling that. Is there like a tip or something that you have that like kind of like gives you those like extra little bits and details that is like unique to what you do?
I like those little, I don't even know what they're called. They're a metal handle with a metal, it's like a metal paintbrush. Have you seen those?
Okay.
So you can poke.
Okay, yeah.
You can make that texture in a tinier area than the foil. You can't control the foil as much.
Yeah.
Or if you want like more of a, like I actually make miniature food too. So when I do bread and I want that
bread,
texture, that's how I did it. Actually, those were with stippling brushes they use for stencils.
Okay.
So they're just natural hair brushes, but there's just stiff enough to go into the clay and make that kind of dimply
Extra
texture you
texture.
see in food where it's not just super smooth bread.
And that's just like a firm like wire brush almost, but like
there's the wire one for deeper holes and then the stippling brush for like a general nice texture. It's almost like a orange skin texture, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
But you got to do it when the clay's real wet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
so very simple tools, ironically. It's more about the supply level type of thing that's where things get crazy, or projects in motion.
Let's talk about supplies then. So we've got like, you're talking foam board, you're talking like miniature wood pieces like balsa wood, or
balsa wood. Basswood is a little better. Balsa wood's almost too soft for me. But I also use a ton of packaging, so there's a lot of recycling going on.
Oh, nice.
So like the plastic, becomes a window frame,
Yeah.
Or a lot of, cereal boxes become siding. So like that Shrieking Shack, if there's a video I have on my channel where I cut it up in these tiny little thin strips, and it looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
Till you paint it.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, that looks real. And everybody's like, is that real wood? I'm like, that's literally a cereal box.
Well, and that's
so
always the fun part about it is when you take the things that people take for granted every day.
Yes.
And then you change a little bit to it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, but I know the pain of like having to cut the same sheets, like size over and over kind of thing.
Paper cutter.
A paper cutter and like slicing it and then like layering it out and gluing. What type of like, is it all like crazy glue, like CA glue, or is there a mix of like materials like that for your adhesives?
Glue is a thing.
It is.
I could write a book on just the journey to figure out glue.
Well, how many glues did you go through till you found the right one?
I think I've tried everything under the sun, and I'll tell you where I landed, because let me just save you some time, everybody. Super glue is almost an essential thing for certain things, but I don't love working with. I hate getting it on my hands.
Oh, it sucks.
It's like, what happened? Everything's sticking to me now, but
and it's like there for like 48 hours, like you can feel it on your feet. Yeah.
And you're like, I hate this. So I tried using gloves. That was hilarious, because then the gloves just stuck together. It was a comedy of errors. Could have just done like a hilarious time lapse of me trying to figure out glue. Hot glue for gluing the foam together.
Okay.
Other than that, I used to use that predominantly in the beginning, and I learned real quick that's not a good idea. So hot glue for paper goods like the foam is nice because it would really go fast. But mine is that, I think it's Eileen tacky glue. It's cheap.
Okay.
But it's so fast. But they have a speed dry one. I mean, it's like $4, I think.
Oh, really? So nothing too crazy.
Nothing too crazy, but you get it on your hands, you just wipe it off.
Regular hobby shop, or is like a
regular
Joann's
hobby shop,
or something?
Joann's.
Okay.
I get mine at Hobby Lobby, and it's shocking how fast this stuff is. You got to get the kind that dries fast.
Okay. But that's the hot
But I'm
tip.
telling you, man, that glue is amazing.
Okay.
It's like the super glue speed and strength, but it's
not the super glue
and it doesn't
feel,
string out like hot glue or spill out, all these crazy things. It's weird. But it's for strength. Like if I'm gluing down little potion bottles, like say on a shelf, a wood shelf, you can't use that. You got to use super glue. It will pop off.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
so those are the three.
So you've got
and wood glue sometimes.
Yeah. Wood glue has its place in like, what my experience is when I was working with like wood chips to kind of create a texture kind of thing.
Yeah.
That would work really well to get them all to stick really well to each other.
Yeah.
But it would not hold well
everything
to
else.
Everything else. Yeah. So I'm like, okay.
That's why I like the tacky glue.
Yeah. Okay. Because we use a mix for certain stuff where it's like the Elmer's white glue, like a kind of a combination of like mixing some like cornstarch with it to kind of thicken it up a little bit, or like we're watering it
just
down.
potions over here,
and then
glue potions,
Mod Podge as well to kind of coat stuff down, and like kind of give it that nice like glossy layer over the top of things and help stuff kind of give almost like a finished look to it.
And that's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
the sealing of things. So if I want like a matte finish, I used to use Mod Podge all the time, and I found it. For me, it either goes white sometimes or it gets too sticky, like it remains slightly sticky. So I ended up doing, Ranger has one called Collage Medium.
Okay.
It's based on Tim Holtz. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's actually one of my favorite artists.
Okay.
But he's also a brand. But he does a lot of kind of worn out, old looking destruction kind of looking things. More of like manly, if you want to say that. But that stuff works amazing. Collage Medium. It glues everything flat. So if you sometimes use Mod Podge and then it bubbles up. Doesn't do that.
Oh, okay.
It's amazing. And then you can go on top and it's so matte that it's just almost like a candle looking. My ghosts actually are sealed with that.
Okay.
So sometimes people think they're candles.
That's
I'm like, no, it's just the sealant, but it doesn't come off. It's amazing stuff.
Well, and that's one of the things as artists continue to like get better and better and progress of what they do. I did not realize like sealing and top coating and like polymers, but polyurethanes and things like that.
Yeah.
Like how important that was for your stuff to like hold up in the on the bigger pieces, like our prints and different things like that.
Right.
Like it's understandable you use archival paper or stuff like that.
Right.
But for the like structures and things, you're like, oh, if I would have done that from the start, like
I would have been better off.
Yeah.
So glue's been a journey.
Yeah, that's we could do a whole episode on glue,
and only artists would like that episode. But we would all be like glued to the episode.
Yeah, I think I have like 2 baskets.
I'm looking
here
at their
of
glue right now.
Like because it is one of those things like trying to find it, and you would sometimes you get into the like thing of like I need to spend $20 on a bottle of glue for it to be good glue,
and it's not even near true.
Absolute
Isn't
shit.
it funny? That's true. But even like the wood glue. So wood glue, by the way, going back to that real quick, there's a miniatures on YouTube I love. She uses it to create a smooth surface.
Oh,
she made like a porcelain sink, but it's made out of clay. As she and instead of like an epoxy, she uses that first and then paints it. And then puts the epoxy, and it looks so real. You're just like, whoa. So there's something about wood glue that ends up like settling smoothly.
Okay,
if that makes any sense.
Like it's like self-leveling
to a degree that that's the one thing I use that for, because when I am doing like purely wood to wood though, that is stronger than anything.
Fun tip to know.
I know it's really weird. Well,
yeah, I mean that's the fun. I go down the rabbit hole of a bunch of like behind the scenes of movies and set designs and like all the different stuff, and like when you like, I think the best thing and the like I love is when like old 80s like people talk about horror movies and trash bag monsters and how they were using a black trash bag and just a few little things would make this thing look like the most creepiest thing ever. And like you watch
CGI,
the movie,
none of that existed.
You watch the movie and you're like, that's a trash bag? No,
isn't it amazing?
Yeah. And so I love that out of the box thinking that happens with like creating, and in the miniature world, you have to think outside the box. You hit on it with like using plastic bag for like the window kind of thing, and making that clear glass, because you're like, you can't put glass because the glass is too thick. You can't get thin. I mean, some
people do, but I'm not gonna get Ken glass.
You're trying to get all this stuff, and you're also being resourceful in like all the different pieces.
Spend any money.
Yeah, and like the thing that you start thinking outside of the box is like when you start layering shingles, you're like, well, how does the shingles outside on the real houses look? They're just stacked up, and you're like, okay, well, if I cut these pieces the right way, and then I just start like, holy crap, that looks like shingles.
That's the funny thing. Miniatures are hoarders.
Yeah.
Like the joke is everybody has some bin with a bunch of crap from packaging that you're like, oh. And then one of my favorites, he's actually a great miniaturist. I don't remember his name obviously right now, but he just takes those weird shaped things you get with, maybe you get like an electronic.
Yeah.
And you look at it and it looks like some sort of spaceship.
Yep.
He literally has an episode, I can't remember his name now. Anyway, he glued it all together and it looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then he spray painted it and lit it, and you're just like, what the hell? That looks like the freaking from science fiction movies, like real. It looked real.
Yeah. Well, that, and then you go back to the talk about Star Wars again. It's like what they call kit bashing, where you take different model like parts and you like mash them together, and you can go like when like some of the people who built the first Millennium Falcon, they're like, yeah, this part is from this model and this part was off of this like random like transmitter piece and everything. So I have a couple boxes.
You're guilty of the box.
Not just one.
Quite a few boxes. Okay, all right.
Well, because it's like I would make sci-fi guns, and it's like, oh, I want this cool looking like thing, and then you don't have to like figure out how to make that piece.
Yes,
you just
like a dome shaped thing.
Exactly.
I'm just like, the ornaments, those clear ornaments.
Yeah,
they're never ornaments in my world. They're always like some sort of dome.
Yeah, I think that's the fun part about the miniatures you're making, is that you can, if you've got the eye, you're picking apart and kind of see, that I can see that. But like if you just look at it and like admire it for what you're like, this is the coolest little like building that represents this, or this is like. So let's talk. When you do the trash cans and like, is that all just like kind of foam core with?
You're talking about
the New York like dumpster?
I call it. It's a new collection I basically started, but I call it urban grunge.
Okay.
It's actually based on an artist out of New York City named Danny Cortez. He's huge, and he's actually really, really amazing. If you ever want to look up anybody,
okay,
he's phenomenal. His work sells for $10,000. Okay, so.
We'll get to that point, right?
He's my mentor, actually. I reached out to him. He's from Brooklyn, New York, and if you ever want to be inspired, I would attach him down below or something, because he's just phenomenal. But he does a lot of that kind of stuff. And when I found him, it was before I obviously was even talking to him. He does a lot of that, and I've always liked that idea. Like one of my very first miniatures before I even saw his work was an underground abandoned subway. I just posted on that on my Instagram recently. But it was all urban grunge garbage and wear and tear, and like there's something beautiful about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching his work, and he was like, there's just some people just see this as garbage, but I see this as art. And I'm like, yeah, because it shows life.
Yeah.
So say like an ice box, like I made one of those. He's actually famous for those, but I did one of those as well, just based on something I saw that I liked. But if you just do a clean ice box versus one that's like been graffitied on, or it's like,
I saw a little like Salt Lake sticker on.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And I've done them where they're themed. So yeah, I did one from the 80s. It had like a He-Man sticker and 1980s like bumper sticker things. I did one that's Utah. That was the one you saw.
Okay.
So if you look closely, you'll start seeing themes in the garbage, essentially.
I'll have to go back and check it out. If you guys are checking out her social and everything, look at the details. That's the tip. Look at the little details.
Surprises.
When you're making those, is that like a water like transfer like sticker that you're doing, or are you I'm
printing it. I'm just printing it, finding it, scaling it down, just searching the internet for funny things or creating my own. I have a funny one it's like Jesus is like looking around the corner. It says, I see that as a joke. Or just like funny, things that are just local.
Yeah.
That's where I love doing that kind of thing. So yeah, I'll just print them and glue them on.
And then just, again, going back to
aging them. Yeah, it has to look real. You gotta tear them up a little bit. You gotta sand them a little bit. You can't look too new. In my world, anyway. On
a piece like that, how does that take a few weeks as well, or is that something a little bit okay?
So yeah, especially if it's the first round, that I'm figuring out measurements and the scale of everything. But I usually create a master so that I can do a different version, but not recreate the whole thing all from scratch again.
Do you work in a situation where you have like templates that after you make that first master that you're working off those templates?
I do that, yeah.
Okay.
Now.
Okay.
Figured it out that late in the game.
Yeah, because
tip.
Christy has
created again.
All her patterns from all the different stuff she sews, and like that we sell, like all of our hoods and stuff that we have on our Etsy shop. Like she has the pattern, and then it's just like trace and cut and do. You've
already figured it out.
Yeah,
like work smarter, not
so
harder.
Same thing. You have your patterns that you go off of, and you can replicate it over and over.
Yeah.
And over
so
again.
as I'm doing it, I'm literally creating another version of it, in like a board.
Yeah.
And then cutting it out and putting it in the Ziploc bag. I know what it is. This is my icebox. know? So they're all different, but the base is the same. Obviously.
The start, and everything. I want to go back a little bit and talk about the markets, because your whole booth, we've hit this a little bit, is done up so beautifully and so well. When you started 2 years ago, did you have that same setup or
no?
Okay.
No.
So how has that progressed for you to where you are now?
I've always had a vision of what I wanted, where I wanted it to look like, I wanted to set you up to be in an environment.
Okay.
So when you walk in, you feel like you're walking into this, Diagon Alley or a British store from, old worldy, but very gothic and kind of depressing. Dark. That's the word, not depressing. A little gothic.
Yeah.
It's not like you're not walking to a cheery place. It's more like a moody, magical kind of vibe.
It's got
People
a
love
feel
that.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And so this last Craft Lake City, that was the first time I debuted that set, which was very intimidating because you're really putting yourself out there when you build something big.
Yeah.
And for those of you who haven't seen it, it looks like a black storefront. It's got a big rounded window in the front with window like old school England.
Yeah, it's very cool, guys. If you,
Thank you.
It's if you have some pictures on your social,
I do.
Definitely check out the
somewhere.
social that way. But if you guys have a chance to see Rochelle in person and go see what she's selling and everything, like you will be like, oh shit, okay, they were talking about this and
it's not done.
Yeah.
It's just the front is done.
Okay.
And then on the inside, it's got looks like bookshelves, but technically what I'm building up for is the walls will be built out and the back wall, and it will look like I've actually built a miniature of what I want it to look like ironically. So you'll walk in and be surrounded by a storefront. So everything will match the front, but that's in the works.
Are we expecting that at next DIY Fest?
DIY Fest.
Okay.
And if they approve me, I have actually applied for a double booth because
we're going bigger.
Well, people couldn't get in.
Yeah.
Which was that made me cry. That was sweet. But people were like, I've been circling around and I can't get in. And I'm like, I think I got to go bigger than 10 by 10 because people want to come into that space, and it's an experience is what I kept hearing.
Yeah.
But once I have the walls and the lighting and everything, it's going to feel
even
like
tighter.
Even the floor, I want to do like a fake wood floor and just make it like a little movie set.
How long does it take you for your setup for a booth? Because are you doing single day shows and like bringing that setup, or are you?
No, I just do that one for big ones.
Okay,
it
for
is
something
quite a
that's
bit of
gonna
work
sit for a while. Okay,
yeah. So if it's a 2 or 3 day in person, well, Mill Creek Common was 2 months, I think.
Just about just almost 2 months. Not quite the full 2 months, but it was close to it.
So it was definitely worth it. But the bigger shows, I do the Salt Lake gift show there, and anyway, some of the bigger, longer shows, definitely not like a day. It's just so much work.
Yeah,
it's probably like 6 hours of setting it up. For me, it'll get faster and faster as I go along, but I'm still kind of very picky about how things are displayed. So it's not like I'm just setting it out and putting them in a row. I like to create an environment.
Yeah.
So it's got like vintage books mixed in and vintage like silver dishes, and that's what's holding things. It feels more like an actual store. That's what I'm going for.
Is the maybe bigger hopeful big piece is to potentially build out that store to be a permanent installment somewhere?
Be a dream.
Yeah. Like get to that point kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm actually, in my design days, I was designing stores and visual merchandising. That's actually something I'm very passionate about. So definitely that would be amazing
to get to that point.
Yeah. Plus, I like being in person. I like people seeing it in person. I have a little online shop, but it's definitely just online. It's not an experience.
Yeah. You can only do so much justice with the photo kind of thing. You can have all the right lighting, you can have all the right effects, you can do all the stuff, but till you can physically see it in person and actually get especially with miniatures, scale is always hard,
right?
Because a picture you don't
see
even if you put
details.
Like a Coke can next to it or something, you go,
it's true.
It's not the same as when you're in person going, oh my god, look at that little
tiny,
details, run of water down the side of the trash can,
the
and
icicle
and all that stuff and everything added to it. So it definitely makes it hard for those kind of pieces to do it justice online.
It's
definitely
true.
In a picture, but
definitely
with the store, with your booth, are you also doing shows that you aren't setting that full setup? Are you just doing bigger shows to kind of be able to set that up?
It's probably going to have to change just due to me having to go back to a full-time job soon, but it's probably going to be more big shows and only big shows.
Okay, just so that you can have that experience at those kind of places.
But I have done just tables, but still trying to make an experience with how it looks and stuff like that. Yeah.
From if you had a piece of advice for people trying to get started and maybe not quite get to that level of experience yet, with the first start, but what are some tips you might have for people trying to put themselves out there in that maker space? I
think just recognize that there's not a better time than now in in Utah specifically.
Yeah.
Is what I obviously understand. But in general, throughout the nation, I think it's an artist's world now. It's like makers are more respected. There's more opportunities. There's more shows. So I would say just go and do it. You're not going to do it. It's not going to be perfect. I mean, if you saw my booth, you know, my first Craft Lake City booth versus the last one and what's going to be next year, you'll see a progression. And so just give yourself some grace and know that you have to get out there to know what's going to happen first.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just get out there. Even if you have just cool stuff and you do a table and you put your cool stuff out, that's all you got to do. Just start. Don't be the creative person that's like in your head so much that you're letting perfection get in the way. Just start. Just throw it out there, and you might be very surprised. It's like that guy that Danny Curtis I was telling you in New York City. He literally was working as a janitor in a homeless shelter, working out of one of their bathroom things that wasn't working. He made a little mini office and was making miniatures and selling them for like $20.
Yeah. And
then he got like discovered, and now he's they're $10,000 and they sell it in 24 hours.
Jeez.
He's amazing. Yeah. But I guess what I'm trying to say is you just need to start somewhere. Don't look at somebody's end game as your beginning and be like, I would suck next to this person.
Yeah.
You might. But then look at them and be like, hey, any advice? Talk to people, meet other people that have done it longer. That's what helped me.
Yeah.
Honestly, there were the people around me.
Well, you hit on it. We had a guest on, Mason. He's a local tattoo artist, but
cool.
He was talking about like he has hit a program where he has part of the program is he has the people who are involved reach out to their like heroes kind of thing.
I love
Which
that.
when you said you reached out and like he's your mentor, the artist, that is exactly what I think some people are too afraid to do.
Oh, they're terrified to do it. You know what though? People are nicer than you think.
Yeah.
You would be shocked.
Yeah. Like you would think like. I think
but they know how you feel. That's why
I think a lot of people also think like, oh, they're so busy. They're like, they're getting hundreds of emails. They're getting all this stuff. Honestly, I think a lot of times they're not getting that email that you
they don't even care anyway.
Yeah.
They just remember, like he talked to me because he remembers how it felt.
Yeah. And so it is like reaching out to your mentor or reaching out to someone who inspires you to become your mentor is like
genius,
super awesome. And everything, like that's a huge helpful thing. And like, it does take courage. It does take a little bit of like,
but what's the worst that's going to happen? They don't answer you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's happened.
Yeah.
Know?
I mean, there's plenty of emails that don't get returned kind of thing.
Right.
Right. But, that is huge, help and huge tips for anybody trying to get out there because we talk about it all the time on here. It's like, just do it.
Just
like,
start. And life goes by real fast, you guys.
Yeah. And
it's so fast.
With that, like, I want to dive a little bit. We're running a little bit on time, but so 20 years ago, you're talking about you did a show.
Yeah.
And like, what was the reason to stop doing shows through those 20 years? Was it just like, hey, I kind of grew out of it? And like, what brought you back?
We didn't have social media.
Okay.
That's a big tool. That's the other thing too is, I'm not ancient, but I'm, old enough to obviously have seen Star Wars on the theater, the originals. Okay. So there's enough, but there wasn't enough tools to keep it going like there are now. You have no excuse.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you know Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's my age group.
Yeah.
And also we're both first generation, we're born from immigrant parents, and there's this whole thing with entrepreneurialism with first generations. But anyway, he's just this, he says like, you have no excuse. Like you literally have no excuse.
Yeah.
Because that's why. But so 20 years ago, my kids were little. It takes a lot of time to try to promote yourself in that way back then, especially like, what do you do?
Yeah. Magazines.
Magazines.
The back of like Slug magazine or something.
Yeah. And that didn't exist either.
Yeah.
It's like, there was very limited, and my kids were little. And I was going back to school. So definitely was more like a time situation. Then when social media kind of came out and I was doing marketing anyway, that's when I was like, let's go full circle and go back
and see.
Because then I was doing marketing. I became a marketing director for the last 16 years. I've done marketing. And so to me, it's like, well, now I know more.
Yeah.
So it kind of was like, well, let's go back. And I've also developed as an artist to a different person anyway. But now manned with knowledge of how this all works. Not great. I'm just getting started. It's not like I have some huge following, because I don't. But I know enough that these tools are vital. It's like, how like Gary Vaynerchuk, just start. Stop thinking it's too late. Stop. Don't worry about it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
They don't care necessarily how old you are. They don't care anything. They just want to get to know you. And I love meeting other artists. That's actually one of my favorite things about the shows, the in-person shows.
Yep.
That's my favorite thing more than anything. And watching people come in my booth. So even if people come in and they can't buy anything or they want to buy anything, but they're just excited or happy, that made the show for me.
We've expressed that a few times. Like it is so like awesome to I always say it's a drug because it's like you get this natural high when someone walks in your booth, and even if they don't buy anything, they just are like super excited to see something.
Yeah.
They laugh, they like, oh my God, that's so cool. They're like, and that's so cool to hear. Like last show last night was a little quiet and slow, but the people's reactions when they saw it's awesome.
It's rewarding in its own way.
Exactly, kind of thing. And I can't explain that enough, like to like people to experience it.
Yeah,
like
you have to feel it.
You have to feel
like you speak the same language.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like to me. I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
you understand, especially because I'm coming from a family of very analytical people. As my dad.
Yeah.
Who's an engineer, but he's one of those weirdos that can do creative stuff and analytical stuff. But I have like one cousin, but my kids are creative, so it's funny. But I came from an environment where I wasn't really understood that way.
Yeah.
So when I'm surrounded by people that also get this joy out of doing it's whatever art form they're doing, it just makes you feel whole. Is the only way I can put it. It's like this support group. What it feels like.
It's a community.
It's a community, and you feel like these are your people.
Yeah. And so finding those people, finding that community, finding that place where you belong kind of thing is huge for any other artist that might quit just working in your basement. Go meet other artists.
Get out there.
Quit being a quiet artist in your like little small
and you'll be
space.
Surprised. You'll be surprised how happy it makes you.
Yeah, it is great. Like go to art shows, put yourself in a position that are like you're vulnerable and just see. Like you don't have to like put a booth out. But just go.
Just
and
at least go around
other
it.
artists.
You're right. At least go see it.
That's what started us was Craft Lake City 4 years ago.
Really?
We went to Craft Lake City. We're like, oh, let's go check out this cool thing. And holy shit, were we blown away by how much talent was there.
Isn't it amazing?
It is the coolest thing.
So cool.
Like it sucks vending now because I don't get the time to go
it's
check
dangerous.
out all.
I want to spend all my money. If I walk out, I'm doomed.
I definitely spend a lot of money still, but like the problem is
I can't leave.
I can't go and like check out this booth for that long. I feel like I'm speed running it because I gotta get back to my booth, and I'm like I missed something. I feel like I missed something, and I didn't get to see everything I wanted to see. I'm like, okay, I grabbed this. I'm like, okay, that's all I could get. I need to get back to my booth. I got to give Christy a break, or I need a break, or something.
Yeah. You need to breathe for a minute.
But that 4 years ago for us was like, why can't we do this? Like what is stopping us? So like that goal for us was like, let's try to be here next year. And then we didn't know what we were going to sell. It was just one of those like, oh, you got accepted. Oh shit.
We gotta actually make stuff now.
We're gonna actually do this. We need a tent. We need like some kind of display. We need tables. We need this. So it was like, that first show for us, I mean, was a little more costly because you had to get some supplies and things. But after that, like
you're using it over and over again.
Yeah. We've had the same tent for the past 3 years. Like, so we paid once and it was like, okay, cool. Like
initial investment.
Exactly. It's
like
not
the
that
same
bad.
thing.
It's not. So
slowly get more and more. Or if you're weird like me, just build a craft.
Build it. I mean, hey, that's one way to do it as well.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure people listening have a chance to go check out what you're doing. What is social media? What's the online store? What's the best place people can find you?
Instagram is definitely where I'm the most active, but it's Rochelle Jahdi Co.
So Jahdi Co.
On all social platforms, wherever I'm at, that's what that will be. And then my online store is rochellejahdico.store, not .com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show with us, having that conversation. We're glad we kept fighting to get you in here.
I don't know why you wanted to be that diligent, but thank you for being so kind.
No, your stuff is awesome, and we really want to just have the conversation because we saw how cool it was. So
thank you.
That's the coolest part about like the fun part. Like you said, meeting people at shows and like having that conversation.
It's amazing.
This is the fun part about it, kind of thing. We can continue that conversation with all the cool artists that we have here, especially having you on and sharing some of that knowledge with us. But I'm definitely going to go look up that glue. And
It's ALENES.
But guys, thank you guys so much for joining us. Rochelle, thank you for being here and having that conversation with us. But we'll see you guys on the next episode. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things you're supposed to do. And we will see you on the next one, guys. Bye.